what makes Procreate the most popular iPad app for artists? There's a ton of amazing features, but where are they? Now, Procreate's been a total game changer for my art and the thousands of students that I've taught. And whether you're a professional artist or a total newbie, in this video, you're gonna learn the most important things to know and seriously shorten that learning curve. I've included the project files below for free so you can follow along. Let's get started. This is your gallery of artwork. To create your own canvas, tap the plus icon in the corner. You can choose from preset sizes, or you can tap the little plus right here to create your own canvas. From here, you can choose your own dimensions, and you can even adjust your DPI. If you have no idea what DPI is, don't stress, just set it to 300. This line lists the max amount of layers that you can have with your canvas. How many layers you have will depend on how big your canvas is that you're creating and the iPad model that you have. Different iPads get different amounts of layers. You can also tap over here to choose your color profile. Again, if you have no idea what a color profile is, no stress. I just recommend setting it to the sRGB, this first setting right there. Color profiles and DPI are important if you ever want to print your artwork. So having it set to sRGB and 300 DPI will help if you ever decide to print your art. For now, let's create a square canvas. I'm going to do 8 inches by 8 inches and then hit create. All right, let's choose a brush to paint with by tapping on the brush icon. Inside of the brush library, you'll find lots of different brush sets by scrolling right here, and then scrolling through here, you'll see all the different brushes within that brush set. Different brushes will have different effects. For example, if I take my Apple pencil and I draw straight up and down, I get a normal pencil line. But if I take my brush on the side, then I can create shading like I would with a real graphite pencil. Other brushes will have effects where if you press softer or harder, your brush size will get smaller or larger. And if you have an Apple Pencil Pro, you can twist your brush to have different effects. So this brush twirls a star stamp. I've included the brushes that I'm using for this project for free via the link in the description below. There's 2 slides on the left-hand side. You can use the top one to change the size of your brush, and the lower one will lower the opacity of your brush. And opacity is just a fancy word for make it see-through. So the lighter I go, the more transparent this brush gets. Now, this is a mess. This is not what I wanted to draw. I can use 2 fingers to tap and it will undo the last move that I made. If I use 3 fingers, it will redo the last move that I made. And if I tap and hold 2 fingers, it'll rapid undo and redo a bunch in a row. And tapping and holding 3 fingers will redo everything else really quickly. Now, if you take 2 fingers, you can zoom your canvas in and out, and you can rotate your canvas, which is handy, because sometimes it's just easier to make an arch at a certain angle, so you can always move your brush. This is like moving your paper around. Having a reference image is super crucial, so I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that you can pull up reference images. In the center of the toolbar are 3 dots, and if you tap on these, you can open up Split View. From here, I'm going to choose Pinterest, and it's going to pull up the 2 apps side by side. There's a little bar in the center, and if I drag it to the side, it will make one app larger than the other, and if I drag it all the way off, it'll close that app. But I'm right-handed. I want my reference image on the left-hand side. So this time I'm going to swipe all the way up until all of my active apps are showing. Then I'm going to tap and hold on Pinterest until it kind of pops up, and then I can drop it onto the Procreate icon. And from here, I can adjust the size of my canvas. Finally, if you'd like a reference image inside your canvas, if you tap the wrench icon over here and go to the Canvas tab and toggle on Reference, it's going to pull up a little reference image box. I can tap Image, Import Image, and then I can choose a photo from my photo gallery, and I'll have a reference within my canvas. By grabbing the little white bar at the top, you can move the reference image, and you can also grab the corner to resize it. If I tap on the reference image, it'll hide all of the toolbars, and then I can just have the image plain and simple. To start drawing our cake, let's start by drawing the top oval of our cake. Now, if you are really bad at drawing circles or straight lines, Procreate has this awesome tool called QuickShape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the best circle I can and then hold my pencil down. I'm not going to lift up my pencil. And what's going to happen is the quick tool shape is going to snap into focus, and I'm going to have an oval shape here, which I can, without lifting my pencil, twist and twirl around. Now, at the top here, you'll see that it says Edit Ellipse. And if I tap that, these little nodes will appear, and I can grab these blue nodes and move them and expand them to shape this exactly how I'd like it to be. And I'll tap the brush icon when I'm done. Next, I'm going to draw 2 lines on the side of this cake. I'm not worried about these lines being perfectly straight. It's going to add more character to our illustration if they're not perfectly straight. But if you did want a perfectly straight line, you do the same thing. Draw, hold your pencil down, and it will snap the quick shape, and you'll have a perfectly straight line. If you tap another finger, boom, it's going to snap at specific angles. So if you needed a perfectly horizontal line, you could have a perfectly horizontal line. Now I'm going to draw an oval at the bottom here. Tap to edit it. I'll grab these nodes so they match the bottom of these lines. Then I can tap the eraser brush. The eraser tool has all the same brushes as your brush library. So I'm going to just erase this back line because in the cake, I wouldn't see that. Now you can pause the video and draw your 2 other layers of cake. Now we're going to start adding details to our cake, and we're going to do that using layers. If you've never used digital art before, you might be wondering, what the heck are layers? Layers are like transparent tracing sheets where you can draw on top of your art without affecting the painting that you've done underneath. For example, let's say I wanted to change these ice creams in here, but I drew them all on one layer. If I came to erase this, well, now I would need to redraw the background and that ice cream cone. However, if I drew this ice cream cone on its own layer, now I could come in here and I could erase it, or I could use the transform tool to move it around without affecting everything else. So to create a new layer, you're going to tap the Layers menu and the plus icon. Now I want to draw a perfect circle for my cherry. So I'm going to try and draw the circle, wait until it snaps into quick shape, and if I tap one finger on screen, then it'll give me a perfect circle. So I can draw 2 perfect circles and connect them with a line. Here's another cool thing about layers. If I tap into my layers and I can see that the cherry layer is selected, if I swipe to the left, I have the option to duplicate that cherry. Then I can come to the arrow tool and I can move this cherry so that I have 2 cherries without having to redraw the cherries. Notice that there's a box around this layer. There's blue nodes, yellow, and green. If I grab one of these blue nodes and I pull on it, it's going to scale my layer up or down. If I grab on the green node and twist, it will rotate my layer. So I can play around and get this cherry at a slightly different angle to work perfectly on my cake. You'll also notice that when you activated the transform tool, there's all these different fun tools in here. So I could flip these horizontally or upside down and all kinds of other fun settings. I'm going to duplicate and add 1 more cherry to the top of my cake. I wish I hadn't drawn this cake so large, and I'd like a little bit more space at the top. If I go to my cake layer, I could make my cake smaller, but if I go to freeform mode, well, then I can really customize. I can make it shorter or I can make it more narrow, and you have a lot more freedom to really reshape this cake exactly how you would like it to look. And then I can move my cherries exactly where I'd like them to be. You can also move all of your layers at the same time by going to the layer menu and grabbing all the layers that you want to move. Just swipe to the right on each layer that you want to move, grab that tool, that transform tool, and resize and move all your layers at the same time. So you can pause the video and take a moment to finalize the layout of your cake. There's one really important thing to know about layers and your canvas. If you take a layer and you move it off of the canvas and you exit the transform tool, when you come back to that layer, it will have cropped anything that was off of the canvas. Now, if I undo that and I come back here, it's fine if you move something off of the canvas while you are actively using the transform tool. You don't need to worry about that. It's simply if you leave the tool and then come back to it, it will be cropped. To keep our layers organized, we can group them. So I'll grab all of these layers and then a little group icon is going to appear. I can close and open this to help manage the clutter of layers. If I tap on this group, I can rename it Sketch. Let's start adding some color to this piece. So the little circle up here will open up all of your color options. So you can display your colors in different ways. The disc has this little ring where you choose the hue out here, and then inside of this circle, you can choose your color. Popping 2 fingers outwards will make this bigger so you can have an easier time picking an exact color. I love the classic slider. This has a hue, saturation, and lightness, darkness slider. There's also this harmony one here. This is simply a tool for you to be able to use color harmonies. So if you tap on this word right here, you can choose different color harmonies. You can make them brighter or darker, and you can move your colors around, and it will suggest colors that should look good together. So with value, this is great if you're working on a branded project and you need to use exact specific colors. You can put in a hexadecimal code here. You can also use HSB or RGB sliders. And the last one is our palettes. So if you scroll, you'll see I have a bajillion palettes. You may have also noticed that there were these little color swatches at the bottom of all of these. So in any color picker that you're in, you can choose a color, tap it to the palette, and it will add a swatch that you can just tap and grab a different color to draw with. If I tap and hold on a swatch, I can delete it. Now, in order to create your own swatch, you'll need to hit the plus icon here and create new palette. Another cool way to build your color palettes is to tap and hold your finger on the screen, and it'll pull up this little circle, which is called the eyedropper. And whatever you last land on is going to become the chosen color, and boom, you can add that to your palette. You can also do this with a reference image. So if you have an image that you'd like to grab colors from, you can tap and hold in the reference image, and you can grab different colors from there. Now you're welcome to choose your own colors to follow along here, but if you're a little unsure about what colors look good together, I've included this color palette for free with all of the resources to go with this video, and you can download those in the link below. The first color I'm going to add is my background color, and if I open my layers panel, we're going to see a very special layer called the background color. This is different than all of your other layers.
I myself am strange and unusual.
So if I tap on the square here, I can move around and choose a different color, or I can tap and choose one of my different palette squares. I'm going to go with the light blue color. Now, what's unique about this background layer is that you cannot draw on it and you cannot delete it. But what you can do is if you check the little box right here, it's going to remove the background color. Now, you may want to remove the background so that it is transparent if you were, for example, making stickers, or if you wanted to make a GIF that didn't have a background. So being able to check that background color on and off can be really handy. Now I'm going to start coloring in my cake. I'm going to switch to the small black texture, and I'm going to use the darkest pink color. I'm also going to create a new layer for my cake. But you'll notice as I start to draw my cake, I can't see those cherries anymore. What was the point of the sketch if I can't tell where I'm supposed to draw my cherries? All right, well, no stress. All I need to do is reorder my layers so that the sketch is on top. If I tap and hold on that sketch group and it kind of pops up, then I can drag it on top, and now my cherries can be seen again. Another thing that I want to do is I want to flatten this sketch into one single layer. If I expand my layers here, I can take 2 fingers over all of these layers and squish them together, and it's going to turn them into a single layer that I can turn on and off. Now, if I tap on the N right here, it's going to open up all of my blend modes, which I can scroll through. For now, we'll keep this set on normal. It's also going to open up the layer opacity. So I could lower the opacity of this layer so that I can just barely see it on my canvas, and that'll make it much easier to see what I'm actually drawing. I recommend that you turn your opacity way down just so that you can barely comfortably see it. Because I want you to see what I'm doing on camera, I'm going to keep this all the way up. Now back to my cake layer, I could come in and slowly hand draw all the pink in for this cake. But there's a faster way to do this. What I want you to do is draw an outline of your cake shape. You can go ahead and pause the video and do that now. Now that I've got an outline of this shape, I'm going to grab the color circle here until it kind of pops up, and I'm going to drag and drop it into my cake shape. and this will fill that entire enclosed space off. Now, maybe this didn't work for you. Sometimes when you try and drag and drop the color on, it might fill the entire layer. And there's a couple of reasons why this might happen. So in this scenario, if you look closely here, I didn't close this shape off. So the color came in, filled this space, and continued to fill out and fill in the rest of the space. So you want to make sure that you have a fully enclosed shape when you drop the color in. But something else weird is happening here. If I turn off my sketch layer, I can zoom in and see this a little bit more closely, but there's this weird outline around my shape. Let me show you why this is happening. I'm going to drag and drop this without picking up my pencil. And what you'll notice is that there's a color drop button up here, but also a threshold. And without picking up my pencil, if I drag my pencil to the right or the left, you'll notice that the color threshold, the bar up here, is going up. And also, this is beginning to fill in more or less of my object. So if you pull it all the way up, it's going to fill the entire screen. And if I have it all the way to 0, it's going to leave this weird outline. But if I pull it somewhere in between, it'll fill the space out evenly. Let's add a new layer for the cherries. Choose the lighter color red, and I'll make sure that my pencil is low. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw a circle for each of these cherries. You can pause the video and draw an outline for each of your cherries. This time, I'm going to drag and drop the color, and this will pop up, and I'm going to choose Continue Filling. Now that will disappear if you wait too long, so you need to drop the color and pop up there pretty fast. Now, if I continue to tap into these different cherries, I can just continue filling in different shapes. And when I'm done, I can just tap the check mark. All right, now you've learned one color trick. Let's learn another one. So let's say I want to color in some shading on these cherries. So I'm going to choose a darker red color. I'm going to make sure I'm on my cherry layer. And well, I have to be very, very careful to make sure that I'm staying inside the lines, that I'm not drawing the shading outside of that cherry shape. Well, there's an easier way to do this. So if I tap on my layers, I can choose my cherry layer and I can engage Alpha Lock. The shortcut to do this is to use 2 fingers and swipe to the right. I can tell that Alpha Lock is turned on this layer because there's a checkerboard icon in here. If you ever forget that gesture, you can always tap on the layer and then look for Alpha Lock. Now, when I draw my cherry, it's not going to let me draw outside of the lines. This is a really handy way to make sure that you're only drawing inside of the lines. Alpha Lock is great, but it does have its downsides. For example, if I wanted to change this cherry to a hot pink, well, I could do that, but I'd have to redraw both the base color and the dark shadow color. So I want to show you another really useful coloring tool. I'm going to draw a lighter color on the top of these cakes. So I'm going to choose the lightest pink, and I want to create a new layer that is directly on top of my cake layer. And fun fact, whatever layer you have selected, when you tap plus to add a new layer, it will add a layer directly on top of there. So I wouldn't have to reorganize these. For example, if I tried to draw that lighter pink on top of here, well, now it's drawing on top of the cherries. And so I could move that layer by tapping and holding and dragging it underneath. So I'm going to go ahead and draw the tops of these cake layers. Now you're probably saying, Brooke, what is that? That is a disaster. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap on this layer. I'm going to choose Clipping Mask, and voila! All of this layer is being clipped to what is showing on the layer beneath of it. That's called a clipping mask. And this is really great because it's its own layer. So if I decided that I wanted the top of the cakes to be darker, I can easily do that without affecting the base color. All right, let's add a new layer and start adding some frosting to our cake. So I like to just draw some little sideways circles, but if you want to, you can draw these circles and then use a color fill tool to fill them all in. Totally up to you. You can pause the video and start adding some of the frosting on the edge of the cake. Next, I'll add another new layer, and I'm going to start adding some fun little details on the side of my cake. And you can use that Pinterest board to come up with your own ideas, or just follow along with what I'm doing. And you can either erase anything that draws off the edge of the cake, or if you want, you can also use a clipping mask to keep this in line with the rest of the cake. So you can go ahead and pause the video and start adding some fun details. I'll also add a new layer on top of my cherries and draw these stems in with a dark blue color. Now I can turn the visibility of my sketch layer off by tapping the check mark on that sketch layer. And then I'm going to add a new layer, and I'm going to add some squiggles in a dark blue on top of this frosting, just to add a little bit of dimension to this frosting to help it look like it's kind of like a glob of frosting. Now, I'm not so sure that I like the color of these squiggles. Now, I could choose a new color and then drag and drop, color drop onto these squiggles, and then continue color dropping onto each of these, but that would take forever. So I want to show you a faster way to change colors. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my squiggles layer. I'm going to turn on alpha lock by swiping 2 fingers, and then I'm going to tap on the layer and choose fill layer. Now I'm going to choose a bright red so you can see this more easily, but by tapping that, it's filled all of those little squiggles on that layer with a different color. And I think a lighter blue is a better color for that. Let me show you what would happen if alpha lock was not turned on. If there was no alpha lock and I tapped fill layer, it would have filled the entire layer. But because alpha lock was on, it only changed the pixels that were already drawn on this layer. So we want to have alpha lock on. But what if I only want to change part of a layer's color? For example,
If I tap and hold the checkbox, it'll just show me this layer.
what if I only want to change this color up there? So I'm going to use the selection tool, and there'll be a bunch of options down here. For now, I want to be in freehand, and I want to draw a circle around that layer that I want to change. I'm going to tap this gray circle to close that selection, and you can see what's selected because there's a wavy gray lines that show what is and is not selected. Back in my layers, I'm going to swipe 2 fingers to turn alpha lock on, and then tap fill layer. And again, if I just pull that layer up, you can see that it only changed that part of the layer. Now, if you find that these wavy lines are distracting, you can go to the wrench icon, the preference tab, and down at the bottom there is a selection mask visibility, and you can crank it way up or down. I want to show you another really fun tool for playing with your colors. So if you go to the cherry layer, we're going to go to the magic wand icon and the hue, saturation, and brightness. And you can use this to drag along here and change the color of your cherries. Now, if you're ever like unsure, you're like, I'm just not sure what colors go well together, I've got some great videos on my channel that you can check out that will help you with your colors. There's actually a couple of hidden menus in here. So if you tap on the screen, it's going to pull up these options here. And if you tap and hold on preview, it'll revert back to the original color that these cherries were so that you can preview and see which version you like better. There's also a little arrow right here. And the difference between layer and pencil, when layer is selected, it's going to change everything that's on the layer. But if pencil is selected, then you can come in here and you can just draw where you would like to see those changes. If you're a freelancer, you know how crucial time management is when you're working on a project. If you go to the wrench icon and then you go to the Canvas tab, Canvas information, and statistics, this will tell you the tracked amount of time listed here is exactly how long you have had a canvas open in Procreate. That includes time that you were just sitting there and thinking and considering what to do next. This is really excellent for you to get a gauge of how long does it actually take you to make a piece of artwork. Another useful thing is back in this toolbar, if you go to the video tab, you can actually go to a time-lapse replay, which will show you all the different steps that you made in making your art. And if you go to export a time-lapse, you can choose a full-length or 30-second version of that. And if you want to share your artwork, tapping the share tab will show all of the formats that you want to share in. And if you tap JPEG, for example, you can send it to anywhere you like. If you hit save image, that will save it to your Photos app. on the iPad. There are a couple really important mistakes that you need to avoid making with Procreate. I'm talking permanently lose all of your artwork kind of mistakes. So check out this video next to make sure that you avoid the worst mistakes that Procreate artists make.